back to another Take the Lead podcast. I am your host, Tara Chantel, and we got another bag talk session for you where we talk about the spiritual bag. And I have such a lovely guest today. Mo, you are incredible from your positivity, from your energy, and just the spirit that you carry. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. Happy Monday for us. And my name is Mo Barret. I retired from the Air Force 3 years ago on April Fool's Day of this year, so 2018, and that was an appropriate day for me to retire. Now I'm a public speaker and just loving life and going out and getting to spread the message and just be positive and help people focus on gratitude, humor, and positivity. That's really my thing. So.
That is like such a great combination, like humor, positivity, and kindness, especially during these trying times. So, how are you staying so positive?
It's just finding the joys in everyday life, and sometimes they're a little bit harder to find than others, but they're out there, and it's just I always say, pull your head out and just make sure that you just have your head up and you're looking for other opportunities to either bring joy to yourself or bring joy to other people. So to me, my motto is laugh, learn, and think in that order. So if I can laugh or make somebody else laugh, that's really just the key, and then everything else is gravy on top of that.
Oh, that is just amazing, especially like learning every day the way of life, like becoming a student at this life. So, how do you stay so curious and intrigued and interested in other people's story?
Well, I love the fact that you call it curious and intrigued and stuff like that. I just call it nosy. Like I'm just like consistently nosy. And so I just think my friends all joke with me, like whenever I try to talk to somebody, I try to give out as little information about myself as possible and see how much you can get, which, both of us trying to do that to each other isn't going to make for a very interesting podcast, but just to be intellectually curious and just figure out what makes someone else tick. So I'm always reading a book, rereading my notes on another book, and usually listening to another book. So I'm just trying to, maybe it's just I have a short attention span. Maybe that's it.
But how you can like take nuggets from it all and then just incorporate that with your everyday life. And I love how you mentioned about like picking our head up, and especially in your TED talk, it was just so powerful when you stated how everybody was going in the wrong bathroom, being mindless. And I feel like right now everyone is unconscious and is unaware. So what is your thought process on when people are not conscious of the decisions that they're making throughout their day?
Well, I think it's a lot of opportunities missed. I mean, you even say it with like I was listening to the vision board. I love the vision board podcast you did because it's not about what we want, those material things, but it's a how we want to feel and how we want to contribute. And I think that's all part of it is when you get so focused on a thing. And like you said, you get the car, you want something better. You get more money, you want more money. But when you live intentionally and you find those things that you can't put a price tag on, that you can't go to a store and buy, those are the things that are invaluable. And those are the things that really fill your soul and will last longer than the car, longer than the money, and give you way less problems than the car, the money, all the other things that you want. The labels, right? You talk about labels.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But thank you for watching the TED Talk. I'm glad you made
Oh,
it all the way through.
you're hilarious, and
Thank you.
especially like being able to find the joy in that. I feel like we are chasing after things and expecting that to bring us happiness, but then
Yeah.
realizing what's really the prize of this journey. And it seemed like you figured it out. So you have to dive deeper into that. What have you figured out about this life to make it so much more easier for us?
Well, you just said the key thing right there, and you've talked about this too, that it's not this destination, it's not the materialistic thing, it's the journey, it's the process. One thing I love to talk about is I'm a singer and a musician, and I think a lot of times I look at things in phases of past, present, and future. So if you're singing and you mess up a note, that you start perseverating on it, you start thinking about it, and you just obsess about that note that you missed, and then you're like, is that note going to happen again? So now you start worrying about the notes that's coming up in the future, and in that process you miss the note that you're singing right now. And I think because we are so focused on what did I say? How did I screw up? What did I do wrong? Or how am I going to screw up? How am I not going to say the wrong thing? Or how am I not going to offend somebody? That we miss all these opportunities right here. Because you've said it yourself. It's not the destination. It's the process. It's in the journey of there. And I love one of the things you say too about people coming your reason for a blessing or a lesson. So it's like, oh my God. Yeah, I hope that I'm more of people's blessing than lessons. I don't know, but you never know. So
Yes, you are definitely, because you make people laugh. And then how we try, I feel like society now, we want attention, like we want this celebrity status because of social media, but we're missing like the true joy of this life is like connecting and having joy, like making people laugh. That is
yeah.
like purpose right there. Like that is just icing on the cake. Like, how does that make you feel?
It's well, first of all, to try to make someone laugh, I think is a little bit of a challenge because there's always that fine line between you don't want to be offensive and you don't want to tune people out, but at the same time, you want to be clever. And so I'm always trying to find a way to make someone laugh. That if I can get a delayed laugh, sometimes that's even better because you've had to make them think a little bit. So like that, I'm not saying I'm smart. I'm just saying that smart humor where you like
Yeah.
my dad was very, very witty. And for a longest time, I thought my dad was dumb. I'm just like, that was the dumbest joke ever. And then like 8.5 years later, I get the joke and I'm like, that was the best joke ever, so,
Wow.
but to be able to find what makes, and it's not about making someone laugh necessarily, but it's about bringing joy to someone's face and heart and life and day. Especially, like there's times when things just perfectly align and it was the laugh someone needed at the right time in their day. Just they were having that low point because we all have those low points. But to be in someone's life and bring joy just for a second, especially when they need it, that's just, oh, I live for that moment. So that's fun in that. So
And that's how we boost our immune system, is by laughing like this.
absolutely. Like my dad had Alzheimer's and we used to do laughter yoga, which is where it sounds ridiculous and it is ridiculous, but you force yourself to laugh because your body doesn't know the difference. And after a while you're laughing because you sound like a crazy person because you're laughing for no reason. But yeah, just that ability to laugh. Like if I'm ever having a down day, I have this 10-minute reel and it's news anchors and weather people just laughing. They make a mistake or whatever, and for whatever reason it always makes me laugh. And so I always tell people, find your blooper reel, find the thing that's going to make you laugh.
Wow. And I love how you mentioned about, like, of course, we might have down moments, down days. So, how do you pick yourself up? Do you sit in it? Do you just embrace it? What's your process like?
It's funny you say sit in it. My best friend Katie, she always talks about like there'll be times she's texting. I said, I don't want to text you right now. I don't want to call because I'm in just a crappy mood. I said, I don't want to talk. She goes, it's okay if you're in a crappy mood. I'll climb down into that pit of despair with you and hold your hand until you get out of it. So she has taught me that it's okay to sit in that. And I think that's a good way to put it, to sit in it and just let yourself feel it. But B, kind of find that person that can help you realize that A, that's not going to leave you, that's going to sit with you. I have on these lists within a list, but find that support system and then realize that it's going to pass. It may take a while, it may go quickly, it may come better, but there's goodness on the other side of that. But to me, the key is finding somebody that will sit in it with you, because it can be a lonely place otherwise.
Yeah, that is truly a blessing to have that support system,
Yeah.
to realize like we don't have to do this life alone.
Nope. It's no fun that way. I mean, you know what I'm like? Your journey's kind of parallel paths and you kind of people come in. I always say people come into your life for a season or a reason. So like sometimes there's a reason somebody comes in your life, or it could be a blessing or a lesson. And sometimes they're there for a long time, your whole life, or maybe it's just a short amount of time, but it's enjoying that journey and that path when you're walking with those people. Um,
Mm.
yeah, good or bad. It's-
Yes. Especially like when we might meet someone that's maybe not on the same frequency that we're on. And how do you let go of someone that's really not supposed to, or their time is up? It's just, how we grow apart. It's just time for us to just keep moving forward. How do you let go of that?
Well, that is a good question, and it's not easy to do. I've recently done that where there's just people that have served their purpose. It sounds, I'm not using them, but it sounds, that they have served their purpose, and I think part of the grace is giving yourself the grace to let go of the guilt and be okay, as opposed to keep fighting and trying to stay in touch and forcing it. But over time, you start realizing that that's not healthy for you to be able to hang on to that, and it's not healthy for them to be able to kind of, people have served their purpose. And the one thing, I was working in the yard the other day, and all these vines kind of take over the tree and they kind of strangle the tree. And so I was in there, I was cutting the vines, and I thought that's kind of like what we do in our life too, is when you have things that are strangling us, that they've always just been around us, sometimes you have to cut them back just a little bit, so that the whole tree can grow, so that more light can come in, so that you can stop being strangled. And I'm like, wow, and that got me out of yard work. I said, I better go in and write that down. So,
That was so smart, because having that analogy to it, to life, and especially storytelling for other people, because I can visualize that,
right,
for
right,
instance, and knowing like, wow, I can really let more sunlight in if I just chop it off. But
yeah,
sometimes it can just be so hard, because we feel like everybody's supposed to be with us and we have to keep them forever. But if it's forced, I feel like we shouldn't force anything.
yeah.
Everything.
It's unnatural. Right, right, right. So there's no natural flow to that relationship anymore. So,
Yeah. How do you stay in your flow and stay inspired, like during these trying times?
uh, I tell you what, man, this has been a crazy year, hasn't it?
It has. It has.
Honestly, it's just been, just I try to keep my mind active, and I try to make sure I'm laughing every day, and I try to, again, just find, the one thing I didn't want to do is come out of this last year, because we have all this time on our hands. I didn't want to come out of it with really nothing to show for it. That's another thing you said. I don't want to have the coulda, shoulda, woulda, and we kind of live with this, oh, if only I had more time, if only I had this, if only, well, hello, we've got the time. So it's really just, I'm a very big list maker and note taker. So I'm like, okay, these are the things, this is how success will look like if I have these things done, and constantly prioritizing them and constantly looking at, you know, what things do I want to be moving forward to? It's like reading a book or listening to a book or whatever those things are. But if you're a list maker, make a list. If get the note cards out, and support your local office supply store, because I'm an office supply junkie. So
Those lists actually work. Like, I have to have a to-do list every day, unless I'm not gonna get nothing done.
now, my question for you though is, do you ever like have your list, and then you're like, you don't do anything on your list, but then you do something, and then you go back and put it on your list so you can cross it off?
I have done that.
Yes,
It feels so good. Those are endorphins. Like,
I'm
that is
telling you.
success for me. Like, when you cross off those little things, we
Yep.
hit a milestones.
Yeah, well, it's that tangible proof that not that you did, like all I did today was brush my teeth. It's not that, but it's being able to have that sense of accomplishment, that I can set a goal, reach for it, no matter how minuscule or grandiose it is, and then be able to just to go, okay, I did it. I did something today.
Yeah, and how those small goals really add up to the bigger future. And I love how you mentioned about the bigger picture. How did you program your mindset to believe in the bigger picture? Can you dive deeper into that for us?
I think a lot of it might be stubborn pride. I think so. When I was in high school and I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, I went and told my guidance counselor, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? You talked about being labeled as having a speech impediment and being in a class, but we are more than those labels. And I had a guidance counselor said, "You'll never get into the Air Force Academy. You're not smart enough. Your grades aren't good enough." And I think that's where some people, that's where that block is, when you hit that first person telling you no. And it's not always us telling ourselves no, but when somebody tells you no, to be able to work to find the yes and say, okay, I'm going to sit through your 3 weeks of speech impediment class, but I'm going to graduate and I'm going to become a public speaker like you did, right? It's me going, I don't buy that I'm not smart enough. I'm going to apply to the Air Force Academy. And I didn't get in the first try, but the second try I did get in, and it's believing in yourself and having enough faith in yourself that you can go out and do these things, what you set your mind to, as long as it's legal. I'm not saying we should set our mind to crime or anything else like that, but
That is amazing. And that's why I feel so wholeheartedly for the youth and try to speak life into them, because how dare someone tries to like shut down our dreams like
Right.
that?
Right. Well, and a lot of times too, and I'm glad that you speak to the youth and that you are having the confidence in them that they may not have in themselves, but even more importantly, that you have the confidence in them that maybe no other adult figure is having in their life. And to be able to have just that one person, it just takes one person to speak truth and confidence and energy into someone's life to say, that person believes in me. And if that person believes in me, then I believe in me. And then they start going at it like they believe. And then someone sees how they behave and they're like, that person believes in themselves, so I can believe, like you just, it's that whole trickle down effect that you just never know the impact you're having on somebody.
You never know. And you don't know who's watching either.
No.
So like being this kind-hearted person is so key on this journey. And I love that how you mentioned just about confidence and believing in ourselves. Take us through your journey into believe. How did you start building up your confidence and having the faith that you can accomplish anything you put your mind to it?
Well, I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress.
Yes.
I think again, a lot of it is just kind of committing pen to paper. And I think a lot of times when you see your own life in your own handwriting, or you commit it and you tell someone, you vocalize it, and you hear your own life in your own voice, I think there's a lot of power to that too. To say, this is something I want to do, and you may not know the path to get there, but figure it out, and navigating the path, and your path is going to look like somebody else's path to the same kind of dream, but who you are along the way and who you become along the way, that's where the fun is, and that's where the adventure is, and it's enjoying that path and not just going, I want to become this, or I want to get this thing, whether it's tangible or intangible, but it's who you become along the way, and hopefully you're becoming a better person. So it's just kind of just making sure that you're following that and know what you're moving toward, and be intentional about where you're moving and know why you're moving.
Wow. Did you imagine yourself to be a public speaker and like telling your story? How did you
No.
get there?
No, I no, I still can't believe it. But it's so much fun. Like, it's just there's some kind of energy you get, especially when you get to do it live, right? So that's the energy that I miss, and I can't wait to get back onto live stages. But I I was I was watching a friend of mine speak, and he was getting ready to retire from the Air Force to do this full time, and his name is Kevin Basic, and I remember thinking, this is a thing? We can talk? We can, like, he can retire from the Air Force and talk, and he is still one of my speaking mentors and good friend of mine. I've known him for decades, and he's just a fabulous guy. He's just got brilliant mind, and he's just, I'm like, I'm so glad that he's speaking, because he does that same thing, just speaks truth and confidence and integrity into people's lives.
Integrity. That is like my core value to stand on. And you
Good.
also have great core values that I can just that resonates with my spirit. Can you talk more about the core values and why did you choose those core values as well to live on?
Yeah, I feel like my core values are changing all the time, and it's just like, but it's that passion and an intellectual curiosity, and gratitude is such a huge thing. I think that when you have your eyes open, again, when people pull their head out and they look for things to be grateful for, they're everywhere, and and they can be big or small, and but to really to me, it's just helping people laugh, helping people learn, helping people think, and just being kind. I think those things are so easy, and we make it so difficult. And it is not difficult. And I that's the thing that frustrates me, is like, how hard would it have been to just say something nice, or not say anything at all, and instead of the nastiness you just spewed out, I think we just have to think first. And I think, and remember that you have that the expression you wear in your face has an impact on the person that saw it. I mean, you may be having a bad day, but if you look all grumpy, they don't know that you're having a bad day. They think that they did something to make you grumpy,
Mhm.
and all those little things about how we kind of live in this selfish state. And I think a lot of times we just forget that, there's other people out there walking around, and we have an impact on them, and we may not know it. So it's probably better to make a good impact and just smile and greet somebody, um, and just let them see that you see them and you recognize them and you acknowledge them.
That means so much to be seen. Like,
Right?
I see you, I hear you, I feel you. But then Oh, how you mentioned we don't be thinking out here. And I
Mm-mm.
really don't think we really even are aware of how we are supposed to be of service for one another. We're not
Right.
supposed to just be selfish about mine, greed. We are meant everybody plays such a huge role and fits to the piece of the puzzle. Like this is such a huge puzzle, but everybody fits.
Right. Right. Yeah, we don't look for that. We don't first of all, we don't think about it, I think like you keep saying, being intentional, and I think that's the key is just to have a purpose for why you're doing it and realize that you're part of that. I love doing puzzles, so I'm glad you use that. But it's realizing that you have an impact and you can color someone's puzzle brighter or darker. You can be that dark shade, ominous cloud part, or you can be part of the sunshine and the rainbows and the unicorns and all those magical things. And again, just lift somebody up. It's not hard, we just make it so difficult.
Yeah, it's how you said you really got to pull your head out, pull yourself up so you can lift other people up. But if you want to stay in the funk, if you want to continue to have this rain on your parade when it's shining outside, then life gets so much harder. But how you're living and staying in gratitude, that is like the fundamental key,
Right.
especially for me. How do you stay in gratitude to see like everything as such a blissful state and just so thankful?
I think again it's just noticing it. I mean, it's so my best friend Katie and I, we have a shared note on our iPhone, and every day we go in there and we just type in three things that we're grateful for that day. And we do it at the end of the day, so it kind of primes you, and a lot of times she's a lot better than I am, so a lot of times she's like, "Hey, you haven't done your gratitude today." I'm like,
Wow.
"Oh, come on." But I mean, and some days it's like I had a good meal, I had a good cup of coffee, and then there's other days like they it doesn't matter what you're being grateful for, just looking for the opportunities to be grateful. I found this letter when I must have been I don't know, I must have been 8 or 9, and I'm going through my parents' house, and I found this letter. My mom emailed the DMV and FOIA'd them. She pulled out the Freedom of Information Act on the Department of Motor Vehicles looking for some guy's name, and she gave him their license plate. And the reason was this guy had bought my dad a World War II magazine because my dad and this guy had had a conversation, but he did a really kind thing. And my mom went out of her way, FOIA'd the DMV to see if she could get his name and address and contact information so she could thank him personally. And I'm thinking, she went to all this trouble, and I thought, that's what gratitude looks like when you're willing
Mm.
to go to when you're pulling out the Freedom of Information Act on the Department of Motor Vehicles, that is, I always think about that. I'm like, because it's not that difficult, because we could just say, hey, thank you, and that could be enough. Or sometimes keep a card with you and just so you can write down on your business card or something right on the back, and just say, hey, thank you for being a good waiter or waitress, or thanks for taking my flu shot or taking my
Yeah.
blood, and just finding those little opportunities to be grateful for something, and the way you express that gratitude. Because if you don't express it, you might as well not be thankful for it because you haven't shared it with anybody.
Wow. And when you are not thankful and thinking that life is just supposed to be handed to you, you are just expecting. It's like a lot of people don't have to do things for you. Like, and
Right.
knowing that they are just helping, like this server is actually delivering my food safely and it tastes good. She
Yeah.
was pleasant. Like, it's just the little things we just sometimes look over.
Yeah, and we treat people less than, I think, sometimes when we put them in that. Um, I would think the person bringing your food is the last person you want to tick off. I'm just saying.
Just yes, when
Yeah.
they're being of service. And I love how you said that we sometimes look at people less than just because of the job titles or whatever standard of life they're living, but we are all equal.
Yep.
We all are a star. Like we're all a part of this. Like
Yep.
we all matter.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing too is everybody's got a story, and I think a lot of times you may not know who you're sitting next to, but be nosy, sit there and find out a little bit about them, and don't be afraid. We get caught up in labels and differences and things like that, but sometimes regardless of how someone may look or think or believe or feel differently, there is some common ground and that we can work toward that. And that's when you like, oh, you're a dog lover too. And all of a sudden you have that in common and pictures of dogs are coming out. And but it's working to find those commonalities, and we can live in this life of abundance because there's these things are not finite resources. Time is the only finite resource we have. Everything else, there's abundance of it, and we can choose to contribute to the abundance, or we can be stingy with it and not share gratitude, not find joy, not make joy. um, I just think it's so simple, and we've made it so difficult. But I don't know. It's that's good job security for people like you and me who are positive and energetic, because like we could be the bubbles of positivity out there.
Yes, because it's honestly rare to find nowadays. It's rare. When I ask people how they're doing, it honestly like is shocking when people don't tell me that they are excited, they are grateful, enjoying it. They always say like, "Fine, I'm okay." I'm like, "Do you understand? It's like out of 4 trillion eggs, you were chosen."
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the fact that you don't even understand this miracle of being here is beyond me.
Yeah. So that's your job, is to help them see that.
I love on your website how you embrace the quirkiness, the weird side, but that is just the uniqueness, the characteristics that we all have.
Yeah.
So, how did you step into your unique side and just embracing it and loving on that? Because that is just so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. It was interesting because being in the military, like kind of being in this very conformist society, I was always kind of trying to push the boundary. And I think a lot of times, being in the military, I would always my first response that I would leave in my head was probably not always the most appropriate one, but it was realizing that I was different. It was realizing that I am a little bit weird, but I think everybody's weird. I mean, compared to somebody else, we're
Yes.
all weird, and I think if we're all weird, then we should celebrate that. And I'm finally, and everybody in the military knew I was a little bit different and a little bit odd, but again, we all are. But now there's a lot more fun and freedom in realizing that because we're all weird, let's find out what makes us individually weird so we can all bring our weird together, and just celebrate that. Because if everyone was exactly the same, that would be boring. I wouldn't need to have a conversation. I don't need to know, because I know exactly how you think and exactly how you feel and exactly how you dress. I don't want a clone of me. There should only be one me and only one you and one of those everybody else. And everybody's experience and path and journey and the way they perceive it is what makes them unique. And it's about finding out that, we can celebrate the common ground, but then find out what makes everybody individually weird. And I think there's fun, and that's a blast.
That is so much fun. And it's like, what is normal?
There is no normal. Normal is weird. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like you're playing it safe. You're not being true to you if you just want to stay normal.
Yeah. It's no fun.
Oh my goodness. And Mo, I love how you mentioned about abundance. Like, how did you shift your mindset to think that way?
Man, you ask good questions. Tough questions. Man. I, I don't know. I think a lot of it is kind of realizing things, and then kind of honestly, it's taking the time to think. And I think a lot of this is another problem, I think, is that we don't take the time to be alone with our thoughts, because we're always on the phone, or even the quiet time is still we're playing Angry Birds or Words with Friends or something. But it's taking the time to just sit and walk with yourself with nothing else, just to listen to your own viewpoint and realize, like, how do I feel about that? How do I feel about this interaction, or how do I feel about social media, or whatever it is, and listening to what your own viewpoint is. It's almost like interviewing yourself and realizing, okay, this is where I stand on that. And I think it was just a matter of doing that I realized, okay, money, yes, get a job, make more money, get a better job, get a promotion, get more money, but what for? Like, to me, the time, like, I will spend money on experiences, and that's about it. Like, the things I don't really care about, but to spend money on an experience, to mail somebody a special package, or to take my mom out and get her hair all did up,
Oh,
that's something I'll spend money on, because that's an experience. And that time is the only thing that's finite. Everything else is, I mean, it's easier to say I'm not like living on the streets. And I think, you know, that there's that problem with you have homelessness or you have these addictions and things like that. But there's ways that we can help people if we don't suffer from those things. And again, it's just leaning into the fact that we all have abundance of something more so than somebody else. And it's kind of trying to figure out how we can help them and it kind of level the playing field a little bit in it, whatever way we can contribute.
Wow, wow, that is just so powerful, especially not attaching ourselves to this material realm because we can't take nothing with us.
Nope.
And you mentioned just about time, like spending quality time with someone matters so much to me. Like I'm able to feel your presence, and then we're able to connect on a deeper level so we can take that time to think to ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes I realize that most people don't want to do that inner work to really get deep within to heal that inner child. How
Yeah.
was it like when you started healing your inner child?
I don't think I healed my inner child. I think I'm like stirring up my inner child. No, I think, but I think a lot of people don't want to spend that time with themselves because, and I'll be honest, there was times I don't want to know what I think. Maybe I'm a little afraid of what I might find, you know. But I think it's realizing your perspective and kind of maybe digging a little bit deeper and asking why a few times, like why do I feel that way? Why do I feel that way? Why do I feel that way? And just again interviewing yourself. But when I realize what's important to me is celebrating the fact that I'm weird and laughing and having fun, then that changes how you approach things. If I want to do something that's fun, then that's going to make some decisions pretty easy. And I think when you're clear about what it is you stand for, it makes your decisions easier. And I always say, you know, some split second decisions take years to make because you've thought about it. You've kind of you've what ifed it. You've thought about it, or you've been through something similar. And when you're clear about what path you want to take, then decisions become a little bit easier because you're like, do I want to do that? Does it bring me joy? Does it make me laugh? Does it make me learn? Does it make me, you know, passionate and kind and curious? Well, if it doesn't do those things, then I don't need to do that. So
Mhm.
it's just being true to yourself again within the legal realms of what's legal. But
Yeah.
so
You said being true to yourself. It's so much power in that. And I love because I live by that too. If it's not fun for me, I'm not going to do it
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
I really believe that this life is to have fun, and how we're just so uptight right now. We don't want to hug each other. We don't want to really talk right now. It's just like making this life more difficult than it shouldn't be. How you mentioned before, it should all be so simple, but we are really making it a lot more difficult than it should be.
Right. Yeah.
And that's like so important because I love how also you mentioned about seeing this life as an opportunity. So, and that's like going back on like seeing it as a blessing or a lesson. So, the fact that you see it as an opportunity, you live by a quote. Can you tell us what that quote is? How you see it for opportunity, but it might not look like opportunity because it looks
Oh,
like work or overalls.
yeah.
Can you tell us your perspective on that?
Absolutely. I believe it was Thomas Edison who said that, but opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work.
Mm.
And I love that quote because it's kind of cute and catchy. But I think a lot of times we're so hesitant to say yes to something because I mean, when you say yes, you've made a commitment to whatever. You said yes to a dog. You made a commitment to walking a dog and feeding a dog and caring for a dog. You said yes to whatever. There's a commitment involved with that. There's a social contract. And so I think a lot of people don't say yes because of those obligations. Um, but I think there's so much fun and adventure and opportunity in those yeses that if we immediately say no and we just discount it from the get go, we don't know what we've missed out on. Now, we may say yes to something and it is work, but there's still something you learn along that journey. Maybe you learn, hey, I'm really good at raking leaves, and that's something I enjoy. It just clears my mind. Or maybe you realize I don't like the blisters I get from the rake, so I'm not going to do that again. But you still have said yes to an opportunity, no matter how big or small. and it's what you learn in that process. And again, for future decisions, you realize what brings you joy, and those decisions become easier, because if it doesn't bring you joy and it's not something you enjoy, then don't do it. Let somebody else do that, because that, somebody might love raking leaves, somebody might love doing the things that you don't like, and that's where that nice equilibrium comes. Like, go, you do that, I'll do that.
Wow, that is so key. It will really, really make it so much easier once we commit. As first, committing to ourselves is so important. I don't
Yeah.
know why we skip over that to not commit to ourselves.
Right.
So once we do that, I think the flow state will just come at ease. And before we close, you have to tell us about antidote. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, tell us about that, because you are an expert in this, and tell us what it means to you. You call yourself, I want you to pronounce it.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, it's funny because every time I type it, I get the little red squiggle underneath. I'm like, it's a word. But so I call myself an anecdotist, and a couple reasons why. The plain English would be that I'm a storyteller. So I like to use real stories from real life and to pull out the real lessons from it. Um, but I think there's a lot of storytellers out there, and I think we're all storytellers. I mean, that's what we do as public speakers, is we're using stories and anecdotes. But the reason I wanted to use anecdotist is because I like to look for the lessons again in everyday life. And so, like my mom FOIA, sending a FOIA request to the DMV, that's an anecdote. But there's a lesson in that, like how to model gratitude and how far you should take gratitude to say thank you. Um, and I just think that saying anecdotist, it makes people think again, because you're like, what is that? And then you start to do research, and all of a sudden, weird thing, weird girl, all of a sudden anecdotist and Mo Barret are somehow connected. So those are the reasons. But really, the bottom line is I like to use stories to start to get into my point, and find some humor in that, find a humor in everyday life, because I mean, every day there's something we do that is a funny story that we can learn a lesson from. So again, laugh, learn, and think, and that's really all you need.
That is incredible. And once we just start laughing at ourselves, this journey is cake. Like, we gotta just laugh it off sometimes. Laugh
Yeah,
off the pain, laugh at ourselves, and be gentle with ourselves. Mo,
yeah.
this was so powerful and incredible.
This
Tell
was
us,
awesome.
tell us what do you have going on and how we can stay in touch with you.
So I have my website, Mo Barret, so MoBarrett.com. One thing I do is I call it Mo Quirks. So every Tuesday I send out an email, so there's a way to get onto the distro list. If you could just go to mobarrett.com, scroll down to the bottom. So again, those are just anecdotes from my life, and I try to make them not too laborious, but I try to put some entertainment in there if there's multiple scrolls. But what I'm working right now is I am hoping to get the live stages and get back out to speaking and things like that. But I also have a book coming out in October, and the working title, I don't know if this will stick yet, but is I know what you're thinking, and yes, they're real. ... The thoughts that go through my head, and it'll just be again a collection of the anecdotes and finding the humor or finding the lessons that happen around us every day, kind of like the bathroom story at the airport.
I love it. I love it. And before you go, Mo, you are an experienced leader. You have been leading yourself and leading others. So I would love for you to leave us with some wisdom about how we can take the lead on our own lives.
That's a great way to end it. Now, I haven't flown in over a year, just because we've all been not flying, not traveling. But just think about when we get the safety briefing from the flight attendant on the plane, and that if the oxygen masks fall down, we all know that we're supposed to put our own mask on first before we assist anybody else. And I think that's a good reminder, and think about that when we're flying or traveling, that if we don't take care of ourselves, we are no good to anybody else around us. And like you say, we seem to skip over ourselves, but we need to take care of ourselves first if we're going to be any good to anybody else. So put on your oxygen mask first, value yourself, love yourself, and take care of yourself, and you will be a better contributor to all the abundance that's around us.
Such a, like, so much, especially that is just a huge part of all of our purpose,
Hmm.
first and foremost. Like, we think sometimes we have to have this big, just just out there, but sometimes it can just simply just be like being with yourself and being happy, being at ease. Like that is just such something that we should never take for granted. It's like we gotta laugh more, and you just
Yeah.
laughed so much today. Thank you, Mo, so much for joining Take the Lead podcast. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate you. I love it. This is great.
And thank you, listeners, as well, for tuning in, tapping in. We will meet you at the top.